Right, so we're back again and we are doing the sump pan on the Subaru. Now I've got it off, I've got a little cheapo parts washer there, so I've given it a clean out. And we've cleaned all the old sealant off, we've cleaned underneath. And I asked around on the internet, and I actually spoke to someone I do a lot of work for. He's an engine builder, does race rally engines, all that sort of stuff. And he popped in to pick some bits up while I was doing this. And I said to him, Subaru, gasket or no gasket? And same as everybody on the Facebook group said, don't bother with the gasket. So I had bought a cork gasket there with new bolts and what have you. And on there it said the cork gasket like a group end gasket, so you don't have to use sealant and you can take it on and off if need be for the race car type stuff, the rally cars. But if you wanted it on a road car, you can use sealant with the cork gasket. But I spoke to my engine guy and he said, no, just use the sealant, use the proper sealant, which we've got the free bond, and just put that round there and that's it. So the car is jacked back up. On the last video, I'd done the pitch mount with the intercooler on, but I decided to take it off to give me better access. And double checked when I said I heard noises before when I was jacking the engine up. I wanted to make sure nothing had been pulled or creaked or broken, so I decided to take the cooler off and have a look properly, because last night I let the engine back down again when I went home and then jacked it up again today. So the intercooler's off, the pitch mount is undone, which is just 14mm bolt and a nut, and then the engine is right up in the air, and now that's off and I could see things were better. I actually went higher up this time and give myself loads of room. So you've already seen the engine there, all the surfaces are cleaned up and we're ready to go. You can kind of see the height we've gone up under here, and the engine mounts there that are raised up, so we've got plenty of room now to get the sump back in without a struggle and with the strainer in. I took the strainer off, made sure that was all clean, and everything there is pretty much good and ready to go. I've got the bolts here. Now I've got these new bolts from Import Car Parts, and they're slightly different to the OEM ones, and they haven't got a spring washer, but they've got a bigger flange head on them. So these are the ones we just got. They're both M6x1, and these were the OEM ones with the spring washer, which are quite collapsed now in the shape that have been on the car so long. So the new ones don't come with a spring washer, so I'm going to go without the spring washer. They only get torqued to, I think it's 3.7 foot-pounds, 4 foot-pounds, something like that. And I guess realistically, once that sealant has gone off, and this car's going to be sat here for a week or whatever it's going to be, maybe a bit more, maybe a bit less, before anything gets done. So it's going to have plenty of time to go off, and once that's gone off, the bolts are there. Obviously you don't want them to come loose, but the sealant's going to be doing its job to hold the sump to the bottom of the block. The other thing not to forget is this washer here for the oil pickup that goes that way up and sits on there. If your one's old or cracked, then you'll need to replace it. This one is still nice and supple and soft, so that one is just going back in. And then I've now got to put the gasket sealer around here. They say the worry is if you put too much on and it splurges out, you'll end up, I've seen it on the Cozzies, the four-wheel drive Cozzies do not use a sump gasket either, and people slap on the sealer all the way around it. And I've seen loads of things over the internet, and it's probably the same with the Subarus, as later on they have oil pressure issues or engine failure, worst case, people drop the sump and you put far too much sealer on here and it all gets squished to the inside, and then the oil strainer gets blocked up with all the set gasket. So it's a fine line between doing just enough that you're going to get no leaks, and then also enough that you're not going to get it all inside the oil pan. Kind of, especially around here, go a little bit gentle. So I'm going to do that now, and I'm just going to kind of hope I get it right. So I'm going to cut the camera while I do this, and I'll come back to you when we're putting it on the car. Okay, so we put our sealer on, and you can see there, we haven't gone crazy with it. It may look like a lot, but when you look at the side, it's not actually that much. We've got a few splurges, and I've stuck to the middle line on the majority of it, so that when it squishes down, hopefully it squishes out and doesn't go into the sump. Obviously you have to go around the inside of the bolt holes, if not you might get a weeping from the bolt. So I'm going to try and get under the car now, and I'll try and film, if possible, try and film and fit it in there at the same time, and we'll see how we do. I just kind of got to get this camera tripod set up and get the torch out of the way. Get the torch out of the way, but still in the way enough that I can see what I'm doing. So you should be able to see there. So like I said, we've got the car jacked up quite nice, and the plan is I'm going to get the bolts in just enough to hold the weight, but not properly do any of them up until I'm right in place. Trying to remember which way I jiggle it round. If it is or isn't that? There we go. I needed to get that front pickup pipe O-ring section into position first, and I wasn't, so that was stopping it going up. So once you're in the correct position, obviously everything goes up lovely. So I'm just going to get all these in by hand. Without going too tight on them. Without tightening them at all, to be fair. Just hand tight. There's 14 of these bolts in total. And I'm hoping there'll be no... I'd say the oil could have been from somewhere else, but I thought while I'm doing all this and I've got to do that Modine seal anyway, we might as well do it. They do an option to buy a new sump, a new pickup pipe, a new dipstick tube to uprate compared to this one due to oil starvation issues. If you've got, like, if you've done the engine up, if you're running a lot more power, etc. like that. Now it seems like it's a wise upgrade regardless, but whilst this is bog standard, I didn't want to do that and spend the extra £150–200 for the upgrade. Now it's not exactly, it's not that it's a lot of money, it's just the fact that I'd only bother doing that if this was an engine I was going to be doing up and improving in that sense, and this is not that engine. Maybe in the future might be something I'd look into, but not right now. And if I was doing that, I'd be doing more stuff to the engine in general, and it would be an engine out job. Now for the 4 bolts at the back, we need to use a wobbly extension. Now this is a 3/8, I could do better if I had a quarter drive, and my quarter drive set is at home, so I'm gonna use my torch here and have a look, and I can get up there because I use this one to take them out, so it's not an issue. It's just a case of I probably would have been better off with a 1/4 inch, because it would have given me a little bit more wiggle room than a 3/8, but you can do it with a 3/8. So it's not a bad job. I wouldn't, apologies for my head being in the way, but I wouldn't want to work around the exhaust headers. I think it's much easier if you just take them out and get yourself a couple of Probably another 10, 20 pounds for the gaskets, for the 3 gaskets, because you need 2 for the head and 1 for the up pipe. But if you do that, then I believe the job is much easier. If you had the exhaust in the way here, I think this would be quite difficult. Right, 2 more to go. The hardest thing is trying to see where they are. So yeah, definitely advise a 1/4 inch drive. Give yourself more room. Last one. And again, remember, you don't forget that seal that goes in the corner. I envisioned myself putting this back on and then finding the seal on the workbench the next day. And then that would be dramas. Right, so we're all nipped up there. I'm just going to go around, tweak them all by hand. And I'm going to let this cure. Well, like I said, for me personally, it's going to be probably about a week or so until this car's ready to fire up. Might be a bit sooner, but that's probably around how long it's going to be by the time I've done the other jobs on the car and the cam belt and stuff like that. But I'd say you'd want to leave it at least kind of 24 hours to give yourself a better chance of it all being cured and then having no oil leaks. Now I've got a torque wrench here and I can only go down, it says to do it 3.7 or 4, I can only go down to 5 foot-pounds. So I'm going to do 5, which is almost nothing. There's no order like crisscross. Could probably do with the next size down on the torque wrench, to be fair. Get one that goes down to about 2 foot-pounds. But this does the job. You're certainly not over tightening or distorting by having them an extra pound. That's it. Now I've still got the dipstick tube to go in there. We've got the dipstick tube to go in, and I've got a couple of new O-rings, so I'll do that in a minute. Not a middle. We've cleaned this out, so we clean inside. We'll put the 2 new O-rings, and I might have to use a little bit of grease on there because I've just used O-rings out of a kit rather than ones from ICP or Subaru or anywhere else because I forgot to order them, and I want to get it back in before I forget. Now we can get the engine lowered back down, and then that sump will set and be good to go. When you lower the engine down, last time I'd lowered it down because I went home for the night, you lower it down and maybe the 2 studs and the guide pins won't quite go into that cradle properly. So once it was lowered on itself, I used a pry bar, just jiggled it around and it fell back into place. So that side of it is done. That is the sump all fitted. I suppose the gasket can stay to one side. These are the O-rings that I'm going to fit onto the dipstick tube. And then we can jump on. Now this oil Modine, excuse me, I cut this one in half purposely so I didn't mix them up and fit the wrong one. But this here, you can look at the height difference there and see probably why we're leaking, because you can see the height of that. If you put that one in there, like I said before, it's upside down. It was in that way. There's no protrusion of that whatsoever. Now I won't be able to get it out. Just wipe that round, so you want to keep it clean. And then if you put the new one in, you can see there, it's sitting nice and proud, which means we're going to get a good seal when we're done. So I'm going to go ahead in a minute. I'm going to put the Modine back on, and I'm going to find in here my kit with the pipe and the other bits. Now I'll get the pipes ready. I won't put this crossover pipe back on, water pipe, because remember I said we've got a broken stud in there. So with this side of it, we're going to get this bolted back up to the block, put the stud back in, torque that up. I think it was to 40 foot-pounds. That goes in like so and attaches it to the block, and then that's obviously the thread your oil filter goes on, and of course we've got a new oil filter. So I'm going to go and do that next. I'm going to do some of this off camera, but I'll bring you back and show you a few of the bits as we go along. So yeah, see you in a minute. Okay, so we put the sump bolts on like you just see. I lowered the engine, tightened the engine mounts up, them two bolts. Put the dipstick tube back in. That was very difficult. I don't know if it's because my O-rings were just a little bit too bigger than they needed to be, but I got it in there eventually. Now we're at the point we're going to replace the Modine seal, the oil cooler Modine seal, and put a new one of these, not quite a 90 bend, but a new one of these bends on one side of the Modine, and then put the main bolt back in and torque it up. So we're back under here. Let me just find my torch. Also, while I was here, I put the bolt back through the pitch mount back there, and we put the bolt back down there for the dipstick tube, as I just mentioned. Now down here, this is where we've got to put the Modine back onto. Now put the new seal in, and I see it's glistening around there, so I've just give that a rub round with some nice clean oil, and then what I have to do is put it up there, put the main bolt in. It's a 24mm deep socket you'll need for this, and it gets torqued to 40 foot-pound or 40 pound-foot, however you want to say it. And then you need to align this pipe with the pipe on the side of the Modine so that you can get the hose on. Now I'm going to attempt to have you looking what we're doing up here if I can. If I put it back a bit, it's difficult to do this and not get in the way at the same time. And if we just grab some different types of pliers for them clips. Remember, the clips on this hose are heat shield type, so they're going to go up there. You're probably going to be hidden by the sump, but if I bring the camera around here, it's going to be in the way of what I need to do. So we want to make sure the seal's seated properly. I've got no dirt on my fingers, and then put the bolt through, and you've got the flat hose there is going to face the back of the car, and the one that's angled at 45 degrees is going to face the front. So we'll just get the bolt started off by hand. So I'm in there, and I want to kind of make sure the seal's good, and now I need to work out how to get this in there and still get to the clips. So they're going to be very difficult to get to be fair. I think what I need to do is actually put this one on first. So let's take the bolt out. The old hoses were so rigid I couldn't get them off at all, and I ended up having to cut them with a blade to be able to get them off, because they've just gone almost rock hard. So just going to grab my little needle nose pliers on this one. I should really get myself some of these proper pliers for these sort of hoses. So if I put that on there, I can shimmy that down to the edge, because basically when the manifold's back on, excuse me, when the manifold's back on, you're going to get a lot of heat under and around this area, hence the 2 heat shields. I hope you can see there, hence the 2 heat shield clips needing to go there. So I kind of need to put the hose on first. So I'm going to get the hose up on one side, get the torch back into the equation. This is the fiddliest bit about this whole job, I think. I'm going to put that there, and then make sure the hose is right up in place. Now I'm going to have to put the bolt back in afterwards. So let's right, so we've got the bolt in. Now what I want to do, if I can possibly bring the camera here, as we're doing it up, you'll see the seal there. So the whole Modine is on the wonk, but I'll hold the Modine straight as we're doing it up, because I don't want the seal, let's just double check, we're still in frame. I don't want the seal to be squished out the sides. So I'm going to hold it up there. Make sure we got it nice and flat. Make sure this hose isn't kinking. And then we'll start tightening this up. Now I've already got the torque wrench set to 40 foot-pounds. Right, now that's bitten up there, and again I just want to check around and make sure that seal, not going to see up this side, so you can only really check at the back, make sure that seal hasn't squished out of there and become dislodged, or it's going to get damaged, etc. So now that's on, there you go, there's that torqued up. So we've got the new seal in place, we've got the new hose with the 2 new clips. We'll sort of look at the hose from all angles to make sure we haven't kinked it, and then that is another job done. Now I'm going to leave these water pipes off now, because the water pump's going to get changed. Try and get you back in the picture. Oh, no. So the water pump here is going to get taken off when we do the can belt setup, because I've got a new water pump. I took off the 2 bypass hoses, which again, just out of frame there, there's 2 bypass hoses up here. I took these off because they were in the way of the dipstick tube going in. Now, like I said, the dipstick tube eventually went in there, but it was very fiddly with the O-rings, but it is in there, and they're both below that top kind of face, so I'm assuming that's going to seal okay. Fingers crossed there's no problems. The sump's back on, the Modine is now on with a new seal. Hopefully that solves the weeping we was getting off the oil filter, but what we'll do now is I'm going to screw the new oil filter on there, get that in place so that we don't get any dirt, debris ingress into here that might contaminate it later on. So I'll go get the oil filter and I'll just screw that up, put a bit of oil around the top seal, and I'll nip that up while it's here. So yeah, that's another job done. One more thing off the list. Then next thing, I'll just pull the camera back out again. The next thing now is going to be to start remove the radiator, and then we're going to be getting the rad pack out. So radiator, fans, top hose. This top hose is much better than the bottom one, but I bought a new one anyway. So we've got new hose, new clips, and then I think that will be, so this out, this cowling off, and then start undoing the belts for the air conditioning, the alternator. So the two auxiliary belts, which I'm not going to change because they look pretty new, to be fair. And then we can start looking at getting these can cover covers off, and we can have a proper look at the belt and setup, and that's when I'll start going super slow, double, triple check everything so I don't make any mistakes, fingers crossed. So yeah, that one, I think we'll leave that there, and we'll come back to start a new video for the whole can belt water pump side of things. So yeah, cheers for watching, see you again soon.